Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be reviewing a tarot deck called Tarot of the Old Path, and this is one of my all-time favorite tarot decks, by the way. But before I begin, I just want to remind you that I have an Etsy page available now where you can get personal email readings from me. And the link to that Etsy page is in the description boxes in my other tarot videos, usually featuring tarot readings, like pick a card readings. But the link to my Etsy page is in those description boxes. And once again, this is to get a personal email reading from me if you so wish. And I also have some art in there as well. And I'm going to be adding a bit more art to that same Etsy page. So stay tuned and check it out. So let's get started. So this is Tarot of the Old Path. Once again, it's one of my favorite tarot decks. I'm not entirely sure why. I just really like it. I like the art. I like the vibe that it gives off. It almost reminds me of like an old, like textbook, or not textbook, but like an old like book that you get from the library. If you're like a 90s kid like me, then you might remember just going to the library as a child and seeing like illustrative books. And this is the kind of art that really reminds me of not even 90s, but maybe like art from maybe like this 80s, 70s, 80s type art, or I don't know. I like it. It's very calming, probably because it does remind me of my childhood in the library. But let's get started. So this is printed by AGM Urania since the 1765. I had no idea this company was that old, so that's really cool. So here we have it, created by the artist Sylvia Gainsford and the author Howard Rodway with the help of 8 witches and representatives of the traditional Wicca path. So I actually purchased this without knowing that it had this Wicca influence, but it really did, like the nature in the cards and just the general vibe. There's something really accessible, very open about it. I like an open vibe, not really sure why, but I really enjoyed that, so I purchased it. 78 tarot cards designed with psychic insights using a modern approach to the magical old path. Made in Belgium. Okay, that's something that I had not noticed before. So here it comes with a little white book, and it says Tarot of the Old Path, a handbook of female wisdom. Ooh, see, that's a really cool tagline. It was published originally in 1990. So yeah, it's been in print for about 30 years now. Yeah, I would say like about 30 years. So that's really cool that it's definitely still in demand. And yeah, this little white book, it's definitely sort of on the basic side, but I really like how, it's easy to read. The titles are in bold. And then you have like these, if you see here, these like divinatory meanings, and then you get a reverse meaning. There's just something about simplicity that I really like, It's just easy to read, very accessible, very approachable. And then there's an example of a Celtic crossbred towards the back, so there's a little white book. So I'm going to just get straight into the flip through. I know there was a pretty long introduction there just because I really, really felt drawn to this deck. I really like this deck. And the back looks like this. So there's some turquoise, there's leaves, very sort of naturey vibe. And the cards are pretty big. And they have almost like, they have a really good card stock, I would say. But they almost have like a velvety texture to them. Like that's the only word that really comes to mind for some reason. And on the back it says 1990 A.G. Muller. So yeah, AGM. So that's the trademark in the corner, in the bottom right corner. So these are not in order because I've shuffled them numerous times. I just love these so much. But here is a deck, a card. So the first card, Mastery. This is definitely kind of on the traditional side, but I mean, there's 3 horses instead of 2. Like usually in the Rider-Waite or most tarot cards, I mean, you see 2 horses. Sometimes they're 2 different colors, but in this case we have 3, and I think this is representative of 4. We have 4 horses, and this is representative of the like biblical 4 horses in the Bible. So really interesting. And then we have the 2 of Swords. And yeah, this isn't a pip deck. I mean, I really do love pip decks, but this is, you know, you got to appreciate it for all the art. We have 5 of Cauldrons. We have the Tower. This is a really interesting take on the Tower, I have to say. And there is a bit of an 80s vibe I'm getting. Something about the art. Almost reminds me of like an 80s like CD album cover. That's just me, but or some kind of like music album cover, excuse me. Yeah, but there's a toad there. Kind of interesting. This is definitely really cool. I mean, I love when I love traditional decks as well, but I love when things are just new like this, like new, fresh for interpretation. Even though this was printed in 1990, I mean, it's pretty progressive, like the art. So here we have 9 of Swords. Next, we have Queen of Rods. So this is one thing that kind of drew me to the deck. Something about the royals in these decks, they all have these sort of like smirks on their faces, but for some reason I kind of like it. Like, I don't have to, you know, really like the royals, but it's nice to kind of have like this sort of fresh, like new take on royals, on the cards representing the royals, because I don't know, it just kind of almost like represents maybe the reality of not saying that royals are evil, but, you know, just historically they tend to be pretty like political. You know, they're good at like scheming, they're good at political scheming, kind of like politicians are now, but, you know, back in the day. Okay, anyways, moving on. So here's Queen of Rods. Next we have the King of Swords. I really love this King of Swords. I mean, he's not facing forward like to the other side of the card. He's facing like towards you, like forward towards you, which is something interesting as well, like across from you. I don't know, I really like his sort of like look. It's very regal. I mean, he definitely doesn't look as sort of shady as I think the Queen did previously to this card. But here's the 7 of Pentacles. Yeah, working really hard. Next we have the Page of Cauldrons. So yeah, once again, not really royal, but like court card. He just has this sort of like facial expression. Like, you know, he could have existed back in the day, kind of like Littlefinger. If you've seen Game of Thrones, like you can tell that he's a schemer. I just really like that, you know. I love it. Like, I don't have to personally like the people represented in the cards, as long as they're expressive. And I think this is so expressive. It's adorable. Next we have the 8 of Rods. So I think this is one of the only cards that actually kind of shows the sort of like quote unquote witch sort of imagery, like with the brooms. So yeah, there's 8 of Rods. Things are moving very quickly. We have King of Rods. Yeah, the art is so, you know, vintage. Like, there's a vintage sort of flair to it, and I love it. I love how kitschy it is, how, you know, it just shows like the time frame when it was made. I just love that. So here's 9 of Cauldrons. Very colorful, very expressive. I love it. Next we have 7 of Swords. So yeah, theft. We have a thief. Next we have the 9 of Pentacles. Very interesting headgear there. We have the 10 of Pentacles. Very representative of the meaning. The interesting sort of like, let's say medieval. Is this like medieval garb? Next we have 8 of Pentacles. Next, we have the Queen of Swords. I freaking love this Queen of Swords. I mean, she just looks like, I'm taking no shit. Like, she just has that facial expression, like, you know, regal, kind of like, don't necessarily like her necessarily as a, like, love her as a person, but you respect her. And, you know, I'm so tired of seeing, like, Queen of Swords depicted in such a, like, cold kind of way, but she has some, like, feistiness. I really like that. Like, there's some fieriness underneath that, you know, Queen of Swords sort of look. Next, we have the Six of Pentacles. Very indicative of the meaning, generosity, you know, I love it. Next, we have the World. So this, okay, so just warning, yeah, there is nudity in this deck. There's usually, let's just be real, nudity in a lot of tarot decks, and it's something that I've gotten used to by now. But this one, I feel like really kind of manipulates the nudity and some of this these illustrative characters, and then just makes it, kind of brings it to a whole new level of like a mixture of like vintage kitschiness, like colors, nature. I don't know, it's just, I love how like vintage it looks. I just really like it. And there's also, if you see, like milk spurting out of her boobs, but it's, you know, in the form of stars, which is, I don't know, I think it's really cool. But I'm into just the more creative it is, the more bizarre it is, you know, I like. So next we have Five of Rods, very indicative of the meaning, conflict. We have these rods clashing together. Very expressive. Next we have the Page of Swords. Just look at how defensive he looks. And he's also holding mushrooms. That's kind of interesting to me. Not really sure what the meaning is behind it. I know there's a book that accompanies this, like a bigger, sort of a thicker book, rather than the little white book. I might purchase it one day. I mean, just to figure out, you know, these little meanings, like the mushrooms that he's holding. That's really interesting. Next, we have Queen of Pentacles, which is what was depicted on the box that it came in. I really like her sort of look, you know. Just it's like regal, not as pretentious as the other ones. Next we have Four of Pentacles, stingy, miser. Yeah, very indicative of the meaning. I mean, look at his face. I mean, it's just so expressive. I just think it's hilarious. It's so entertaining. Next we have Two of Rods. We have the Star, very Aquarian energy. Yeah, I like this. And there's some kind of astrological tool or device. I think it was like a device maybe used back then in ancient times, maybe even now. We have Illusion. So I believe this card replaces the moon. As you know, I mean, you can still see the scorpion or the lobster, lobster. But you don't see the dogs looking up at the moon like usual. Oh, there's a dog right there. Okay, there's a dog under the willow tree on the left. I actually really like this. This is why I love this deck. It's just like a really kind of like a trippy, like progressive sort of like almost like a new age version of the Rider-Waite, with obviously like you know, the old path sort of influence. We have Three of Swords. Definitely kind of getting like sort of like an Attila the Hun vibe from the Swords people sometimes, which is also really cool. Eight of Swords. We have the King of Pentacles, very regal. I like his vibe. We have the Wheel of Fortune. Oh my god, look how delicious this card is. It's just so many things going on. There's an owl. Oh my gosh. Yes. Next we have the Emperor. Very regal, very kind of a traditional depiction, you know, very abundant energy. Not as stern as most emperors. Then we have Three Rods. We have Seven of Rods. We have the Seven of Cauldrons, or the Seven of Cups. This is definitely sort of an interesting take on what it usually is. It's a little different. Next we have the Magician. Oh my gosh, I love this. There's Stonehenge in the back. There's a unicorn. It's just so, it's like, you know, the Magician of the Rider-Waite, obviously, but a totally different version. And in its newness and just how progressive it is, and like the new age sort of like vintagey, like kitschy, you know, really kitschy art of that era. Yes, I'm digging this so much. Then we have the Wise One, the Hermit. Definitely has a very traditional depiction. There's snow and the lantern. We have 5 of Swords. We have Knight of Rods. We've got Ace of Rods. Stonehenge again in the back. We have the Guide. So this is, I believe, Temperance. So this is actually what replaces Temperance. And I like it. I love just kind of like staring at it and trying to interpret what it means. I just feel like there's so many layers behind it, and that just makes a card, in my opinion, it just makes art really juicy when you can interpret it in like a gazillion different ways and then have it add up to, like, you know, all sorts of meanings. 4 of Cauldrons. Knight of Cauldrons. Ace of Pentacles. Ooh, yeah, I like that. The Fool. Yeah, definitely a different depiction, but here we have the baby touching the flame. So there's all sorts of sort of different perceptions of the Fool, I think, represented in this card. With the baby touching the fire, we have the traditional Fool on the left. I'm sure the flowers have certain meanings as well. The 6 of Cauldrons. The 10 of Cauldrons, 10 of Cups, very indicative of the traditional meaning. We have the Page of Pentacles. Oh my gosh, just look at his face. It's just so funny. Next we have the 4 of Swords. We have the Queen of Cauldrons, or the Queen of Cups. Ooh, look how evil she looks, but I don't know why I like it. It's so expressive, just their facial expressions, you know. Next we have the Sun. Ooh, very new agey, all these astrological symbols. There's a pyramid on the sun's forehead and a phoenix on the very bottom. Next we have 5 of Pentacles, very expressive, very indicative of the meaning, the traditional meaning. Next we have 3 of Pentacles. We have the High Priestess, very abundant sort of energy, animals, and oh, it's nice. The Lovers, very Adam and Eve sort of vibe there. Next we have the 6 of Rods. We have the 10 of Rods. We've got the 9 of Rods. We have the Close. So I believe this is Death. And yeah, as you can see, yeah, there's death right there. There's an owl. There's just so much symbolism in these. I meit's just nice to own, like, just to look through sometimes. I love using it. But sometimes it's just nice just to look at the art sometimes. It's just really entertaining. 8 of Cauldrons. The High Priest. So this replaces the Hierophant. Definitely a different vibe, but, you know, similar meaning. Next we have the 10 of Swords. Very sort of classic. No blood though. Sometimes there's blood. We have King of Cauldrons. Oh, look how greedy, or I don't know, just something about his face. Very, not greedy, but yeah, more emotional, I would say, which is fitting for the King of Cups. Justice. Definitely a very different depiction of justice, which I like. Sometimes I really do like this kind of creativity in a deck. Karma. So I believe this one replaces... You know what? I'm not entirely sure. There's a lot that replace different cards in various forms in the deck, so I'm not entirely sure, but somebody leave a comment if you remember. But I love it. It's really interesting. Next we have Knight of Swords. We have 2 of Pentacles. We have Ace of Cauldrons, blah, Ace of Cups. We have the Ace of Swords. So the Ace cards aren't as embellished as I'm used to, but you know, everything else is so embellished, so it's fine. Very decorative, everything else. Knight of Pentacles. Look at his bull haircut. Oh my gosh. Next, we have 4 of Rods. We have 3 of Cauldrons. Oh, I like it. Ooh, we have the Hanged Man, so he's a jester. I think this is a card that actually a lot of people kind of had a problem with, because it kind of does deviate from the traditional meaning. I feel pretty neutral about it, but I haven't really delved into it. Like, I haven't stared at it enough. We have Strength. Deviates a little bit also from the traditional sort of look, but I like it. We have 2 of Cauldrons. Very, very indicative of the meaning. I love how expressive these cards are, regardless of anything. Temptation. So this replaces the Devil. Maybe the Fox is the Devil. Who knows? But as you can see, yeah, there's some codependency, I think, here, and addiction. You know, temptation represented by the snake. I like it. Definitely, oh my gosh. Okay, very creative take on the Devil. And last card, we have the Empress. Extremely abundant energy. She's pregnant. There's animals. There's a baby suckling on her boob. There's deer. There's birds. There's, I think that's a lotus that she's holding. I'm not sure. And then there's some wheat at her feet. There's a moth at the very bottom. Bunny. There's the symbol for female, I guess, like fertility. I like it. It's kind of soothing to look at. But anyway, so that was the review for Tarot of the Old Path. Once again, we have Queen of Coins depicted on the box. Yeah. Once again, artist is Sylvia Gainsford, and the author is Rodway, and it was influenced by the traditional Wicca path, which I had no idea when I bought it, but I actually appreciate it more now, knowing sort of the history behind the deck, like the influences behind it. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I mean, this is one of my favorite decks of all time. It just feels good to look at. Like, it just feels nice. I love the images. Something about it just kind of calls to me. It's very accessible, very almost comforting to look at these images. I'm not sure why, but I really like it. I just want to remind you again that, once again, I have an Etsy page where you can get personal readings from me if you wish. And the link to that is in my description boxes in my other tarot videos, usually featuring tarot readings, like pick-a-card readings. So just look in those description boxes and you will find my Etsy page with some art in there as well. So have a good night. I hope everyone is staying safe. I hope everyone is staying sane during this time, during quarantining. And I hope this video cheered you up in some way, because I really enjoy doing these. I mean, it's kind of a cheer up for myself as well. So have a good one. Have a good night. Bye, everyone.